So this is only really our second full day here in Namibia, and already we have our vehicle and we've hit the road exploring. We spent our one day in Windhoek pretty much sleeping. We saw a couple of sights, but mostly it was sleeping. So being our first day here with the vehicle, seemed like a pretty good opportunity to do a bit of a tour of our accommodation for the month. Boy, a month sounds like a very long time. Anyway, this is where we'll be living for the next month. So I'm not super sure what it was that we were expecting here, but we've certainly been pleasantly surprised. We have pretty much everything that we could possibly need for the next 30 days. We have a fridge, we have plenty of storage space for putting stuff, some big storage space in some cases. We have a sink, we have cooking appliances, pretty much everything you could possibly need. And of course, when we're tired and ready for bed, well, that's pretty easily solved by pulling down this, and off to sleep we go. Now, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find anything to really complain about with this vehicle. I guess the only thing I could think of was that there's not an awning or anything to sit under. But if this campsite is anything to go by, who needs an awning when you're staying in places like this? So yeah, believe it or not, all of this is ours for the night. It even has a loft and a cat. Not many places you can get a cat. So not only did we get a large shelter with a loft and a sink and some cooking facilities, we also had a private bathroom and shower. With hot water even. But better still, each campsite has its own little jetty. It's kind of the perfect place to kick back and relax. Not a lot of wildlife there, but there is a large aviary and ostriches. Bizarrely enough, they even have emus as well. Only just over an hour outside of Windhoek, we couldn't have picked a better campsite for our first night on the road in Namibia. Our first night wasn't super comfortable. It ended up being a little bit cold because, well, when I tried to close the door last night, the handle snapped off. I just broke the door reenacting it. Oh shit. Yeah, so that actually happened. While trying to reenact breaking the handle off, I accidentally broke the hydraulic for the door as well. Whoops-a-daisy. There was no way to close the door properly, so it was freezing. So this morning we're on the road again and heading back to Windhoek to get the door fixed. Not the best of starts, I guess. So having driven all the way back to Windhoek for that quick pit stop, and I mean it really was a pit stop, it took about 5 minutes to completely replace the door mechanism. We were back on the road and we were heading here. This is the Quiver Tree Forest. This is a place I was really interested in visiting here in Namibia. These quiver trees are really distinct looking and they make for a really interesting foreground subject for astrophotography. So we arrived here just on nightfall, which wasn't so much of a disadvantage because I was here for the astro. One thing that I wasn't super sure about with this campsite is the fact that they actually charge an additional fee for astrophotography. Now, I can kind of understand. I mean, at the end of the day, astrophotography is a bit of a niche subject, and so they're sort of capitalising on a bit of an additional interest there. You don't have to pay that if you come to stay here. You can just come and have a look at the trees. At the same time, I do think it kind of discourages people from maybe trying astrophotography who might have been interested in doing it. So in that way, I think it's a little bit of gatekeeping there. But if you're interested in astrophotography, as far as I'm concerned, it's well worth the money. And although we had a little bit too much moonlight last night, I still think we managed to get some really nice shots. Unfortunately, with too much moon, it tends to reduce the visibility of some of the stars, so it's not quite as spectacular. But with these as your foreground subject, I don't think you can go wrong. So oftentimes in these trees you'll find these enormous weavers' nests. Now these nests can house up to maybe a couple of hundred birds at any given time, and they have lots of different little entryways that all interconnect, so they're pretty spectacular. So I guess this here is a young quiver tree, and they start off with really smooth bark, but the bark doesn't stay that way. It eventually starts to crack, and you can see with all of the adult quiver trees, they end up with really interesting bark patterns all over their trunks. There's something really fascinating about how this has grown between these rocks. Looks cool. And if you're lucky, you'll sometimes manage to spot the odd hyrax here in the rocks. Hyraxes are strange animals. They're not rodents or marsupials. Their closest living relative is in fact the elephant, or subungulates like the dugong. Isn't it obvious? So the accommodation isn't quite as flush as it was back at Lake Oanob. We do have our own bathroom here, electricity, water, everything we could possibly need. I don't think you necessarily always get your own bathroom though. It's really just down to how many people are staying here. Right now there's hardly anybody, so we have our own bathroom. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. This will be the first in a series of videos coming from Namibia. In the next video, we'll be heading down to Fish River Canyon, so keep an eye out for that. Until then, thanks for watching. See you next time.